For young people today, the problem is not so much the idea that they don't want to vote or it's uncool to vote. It's the people who are running or the people that are actually within the elections who don't actually promote anything about youth, social programs for youth, and they find themselves empathetic to the point in which they choose not to vote because they come to the realization that most things will probably not make a difference in their current lives. Canada's auto worker industry is the primary industry for Ontario, let alone for the entire country. I am actually a little bit stricken with wonderment why it was that we hadn't actually gave in and supported the auto working industry and bailed them out like we did back in the 80s. The problem we're facing now is the idea that many of these people who make Canada's primary industry are now losing their jobs, and by January most of, if not all, the plants are being shut down. What will probably happen is if Canada is going to continue to raise their military spending by 9%, the best way in actually supporting the auto workers is actually creating militarized autos industry through these workers, and then through this continue through anticipation of labor and sources. We can actually create more jobs, hold the jobs that we have, because once we lose our industry, it's going to be gone. We cannot retrace it, we cannot rebuild it, especially if it's a Canadian owned, and most of our industry will end up in foreign ownership, which will cause less for economic boom in Canada and more job specifications and problems within those specifications and less wages for work. In Canada, we have a liberal democracy, and the one problem I see that has happened is that Harper himself had chose to make this decision, and he's going to have to abide by what he's done, and he's going to fall with that decision. And as for the Governor General, she made the right choice in holding off and waiting and proceeding with our current economic crisis and allowing for there to be a term in which we, the people of Canada, and the governments or the political parties of Canada can join together and continue a debate in which we can actually come by to understand that we live in a liberal democracy and we don't have one party that has ownership of power. We have many parties for which this democracy is established. It seems that we are recirculating into these old, forgotten people who all want, or old politicians who just want power. And as for Michael Ignatieff, I cannot see him winning in the next election, but I can see him actually getting more votes than we did in the last election.
Here's the thing, and here is exactly why I respect young people like Dan, who is really taking it on, really taking an initiative and an interest in Canada and in politics, because what's happened in Canadian politics is the vacuum that's been created is all the Mike Pearsons are gone. Dester Pearson has left the building, unfortunately, and in his absence has created a power vacuum or a leadership vacuum in this country that a next generation must step forward and fulfill, because Canada is crying out for another Mike Pearson. It really is, and we really need that generation from the 50s and 60s who formed the leadership of this country for the next 50 years to really step up, to really come forward and take on that very important task that has to happen. And that's why I'm so pleased that people like Dan are stepping up and really taking as an interest in Canada and in issues around Peterborough and around the country, things that have to happen and need to be done. So Dan's my vote for the next great Canadian PM.